Zacznijmy od czasów, w których żyjemy. Przede wszystkim to są czasy, gdzie komunikujemy się z pomocą internetu.
Let's start with the time, and this is the time of internet, connecting via internet.
A ojciec chyba preferuje podróże i spotykanie się z ludźmi osobiście. Czy to jest ważne?
And it looks like father prefers communication face to face. You are traveling a lot. Do you think it's important?
So why I am traveling is because I am carrying a legacy. Because there was a man called Marshall Rosenberg who had some special gift that he wanted to share in this world. And we used to say that he lived out of his suitcase. And he traveled all over the place, this world, because there was an urgency for him to share the message that he wanted to share. Because he had something that he discovered, a message that he wanted to share with the world, because he realized that it is very, very useful and much needed for the world.
Ojciec spotkał Marshalla Rosenberga. Był też ojciec na jego pewnie niejednym wykładzie. Chciałabym spytać o to pierwsze spotkanie. Co było w tej idei, albo co było w tym, jak on o niej opowiadał, że to się stało życiową drogą ojca?
You've met Marshall. Probably you had a lot of conversations with him. You attended a lot of his lectures, workshops. But what I really want to know is what was that one thing which was the key thing which made you change your life and follow his path?
What Marshall had to share were concerned about the conflicts in this world. And that is why there was this urgency to share this message, because people were, and the world was more and more in conflict. I was coming from a place of conflict, because there was a war that was going on in my country. And my close friend was killed in this war, and I was a witness to that. And I was afraid I'll be the next victim in that war. So that's why I left my country and came to continue my studies.
Będą nas słuchać ludzie z całego świata może. Powiedzmy, bo to chodzi o konflikt w Sri Lance i to były lata 80. już?
I want to clarify because people who will listen to us may not know where you coming from. So this war took place in Sri Lanka and those was in the 80s?
That was in the 80s. And the war went on for 30 years. So I left Sri Lanka early 90s, late 80s, after that incident of my friend being killed. And I was studying communication, and now I had to go back, but I was looking for what to take back to my country.
A te studia czego dokładnie dotyczyły? Bo wiemy, że to były studia dotyczące komunikacji, ale komunikacja Nonviolent Communication jest bardzo, bardzo specyficznym rodzajem komunikacji i też muszę powiedzieć, że dla mnie odkrywczym.
So let's be more specific, because you said that you studied communication and there are different ways to communicate. And when I think of nonviolent communication, it seems like it's a different method from the communication as we typically know it.
So I was studying communication because I was working in the church, communicating, making radio programs and making short films to talk about the gospel in the church. So when I came, I continued my studies in communication, doing a PhD in communication. So I did communication, all theories about communication and different ways of communicating and all that. But still I do not know what is something that really could be helpful for the people back home who are struggling, who are fighting, who are in the middle of a war.
My rozumiemy, że to było tak, że ojciec już studiował komunikację, a dopiero po poznaniu Marshalla Rosenberga dostał dobre narzędzie do tego, żeby komunikację wykorzystać naprawdę do łączenia ludzi i do rozwiązywania konfliktów.
So I understand that you studied communication for many years, but only meeting Marshall gave you this essence of what communication is about and how to bring it to people who are in conflict, how communication can allow people to communicate in the midst of conflict.
Yes, I knew about communication, but when I met Marshall, I found out what is the best communication that I could take back to a people in conflict in the middle of a war. That could be of help to them.
To, co naprawdę może działać. Ale żeby zaczęło działać, to też musimy zacząć i pomyślałam, że w tej rozmowie będzie dużo o początkach, więc zapytałabym, jeżeli przychodzi osoba, która po raz pierwszy słyszy o NVC, to od czego ojciec zaczyna?
My intention of this conversation was that we will be talking about beginnings. So we touched on your beginning of getting to know NVC, and now I would like to ask you, what do you think the person who just begins adventure with NVC could know? Like, what would be the essence, the one thing you would want to share with someone who just begins getting to know NVC?
So what was essential and was most helpful in the teachings of Marshall is to understand life's changes, life's conflicts in terms of this energy of needs. To be able to understand through this lens of our needs. And because that helps us to adjust ourselves, to change ourselves, to be able to accommodate and to understand life as it happens to us. What was most useful in the teachings of Marshall was this lens of needs through which we can understand our life as it encounters conflicts, as it moves us through conflict, so that we can understand a little more deeply what is happening to us.
Czy to chodziło o zmianę patrzenia na człowieka i samego siebie przez perspektywę jego potrzeb?
Was it about looking at life and yourself through lens of needs?
Yes. When you look through the lens of needs, you understand more deeply what is the life about, what is this conflict is about, and how to encounter it, how to be present to it.
Potrzeby niektórym osobom nie kojarzą się dobrze, ponieważ spełnianie swoich potrzeb kojarzy się z egoizmem. I dla mnie osobiście najtrudniejsze jest to, gdzie jest ten balans, żeby z jednej strony zadbać o swoje potrzeby, ale też uwzględnić potrzeby innych. Czy można w ogóle coś na ten temat powiedzieć, czy to każdy musi sam wyczuwać?
Needs sound selfish in our culture. There is this connotation that when I take care of my needs, that means that I am selfish. And I was wondering, where is the balance between caring for my own needs, but also including needs of other people?
So the guiding principle of nonviolent communication is that everything that we do in life is always to fulfill our needs. And when we say needs, we are not talking about what we want, but we are talking about something that is deep inside us. Everyone has the need, universal needs. Need for safety, need for comfort, need for love, affection, company, community, all these basic needs in our lives.
Ludziom czasem ciężko jest zrozumieć, że człowiek jest z gruntu rzeczy dobry. Tak jak powiedział Marshall, że jednak tak jak dzieci, prawda, one mają naturalną skłonność do dzielenia się i dzielenia się radością również. Natomiast ja często się spotykam z takim zdaniem, że ludzie się nie zmieniają, że my jesteśmy skazani na wojnę. Co ojciec na takie stwierdzenie?
People have a difficult time believing that humans, that we in depth, like in deep core, are good. And there is this belief which is very common in the society that there is an evil embedded in our nature, and no matter how much we try to develop, there is no chance that we can stop wars. And what do you think about this nature in us?
So these are our own thinking, our own ideas. But what is important is to see life as it is. And when we say that everyone is trying to meet their needs, through this principle we absolve everyone. Everyone is innocent. And everyone, there is no evil in what they do. But the strategies that they take to meet these needs brings conflict, brings pain, brings war, and brings so much of these conflicts and struggles in the world.
Wrócił ojciec na Sri Lankę. W którym roku i jakie były ojca pierwsze kroki? Jak wyglądało to spotkanie z ludźmi głęboko naznaczonymi przez wojnę, z tą taką piękną i mogłoby się wydawać utopijną wręcz ideą, że my możemy być ze sobą w pokoju?
So how was your return to Sri Lanka? When did it happen and how was it? How was meeting conflict and real life with your idea, which may seem like utopia? How did you came back to the place of conflict and war and pain with your idea of needs and living through your needs together in peace?
So when I returned in 1997, I did not return alone. I returned with Marshall to Sri Lanka. And we started sharing with Marshall, with the people in conflict, about this way of dealing with our conflicts.
Chciałabym o tym usłyszeć, jak to wyglądało praktycznie. Czy, nie wiem, wieszaliście plakat i na tym plakacie było: hej, będziemy wam pomagać w dogadywaniu się, spotykaniu się wspólnym, pomimo tego, że mamy tak wiele różnic.
I want to know some details. How did you do it? How did you practically do it? Did you put some posters on the walls? Did you came to people and say, hey, we are here to help you? How did you start? What did you do?
I just introduced Marshall to the people. Here is someone who has worked with conflicts in all over the world, and he has something to say. Maybe it can help you.
Oni zostali zaproszeni do kościoła, tak?
Did you invite them to the church?
I invited them in halls where everyone can come. There were Muslims, there were Hindus, there were Buddhists. Everyone could come in a common place and listen to what he has to say.
No dobrze, i wyobrażam sobie, że siadacie przed tymi bardzo różnymi ludźmi i zapada cisza.
So I imagine that you sit in front of those people who are very different. They come from different cultures, different backgrounds, and you sit in front of them and there is a silence.
Maybe.
It was an ethnic conflict, so between the Tamils and the Sinhalese. I am a Tamil myself, but I let Marshall speak to them. First he listened to their conflict, listened to what they had to say, and then he helped them to understand their conflicts. So there were Tamils who were mostly Hindus, and there were Sinhalese, the ethnic group, and who were mostly Buddhists. But they were all able to come together. So I was in the background because I am myself a Tamil.
Czy widziałeś, jak to naprawdę działa? Jak to było? Jakie były te twoje pierwsze obserwacje?
So did you see that it works? What was your first observation when you witnessed the meeting of Marshall with two ethnic groups which were in deep conflict?
So Marshall helped them to ask them, listen to what they had to say about what they were fighting for, what the conflict is about. And then he gave them to understand their conflict in terms of their needs, what they were trying to do, how they were trying to meet their needs. But unfortunately, their needs were the same, but the strategies were different. And most of the conflict was on strategies.
Czy widział potem ojciec, jak to działa już w praktyce, kiedy Marshall wyjechał i jak potem ci ludzie ze sobą próbowali się dogadywać? Jak to wyglądało?
Did you had a chance to see how this works after Marshall left, after the meeting was over? How did it affect the ordinary life of these people? How did they finally get together and how they were able to move forward from the place of conflict?
So when they attended Marshall's workshops, they realized that what he had to say was very helpful for them, and they wanted to have more and more workshops to understand a little more clearly what their problem is. Because they understood more clearly what their real needs are. And they were able to see the strategies that they were taking were not very helpful, so that they were able to see and look for other ways, other strategies that will meet their need.
To był rok 1997. Tak sobie myślę, co było dalej, dlatego że w tej chwili ojciec podróżuje, opowiadając o duchowym aspekcie NVC. I to już jest taki wyższy poziom.
Now, listening to your story, I am wondering what happened in between, because you told me the story of Marshall coming to Sri Lanka, and now you are traveling all over the world. You are the spiritual person who integrated NVC, and the question is, how did it happen? How did you get where you are right now?
When I arrived in Sri Lanka, they offered me a position as a lecturer at the university. But then I realized that the university, we use a lot of our heads, we never use our heart very much. And it's a place of a lot of conflicts. So I invited some of the children who have lost their parents in this war, some 20 children, and I lived with them. So I lived with these children who had gone through very, very difficult times. Some of them had witnessed their parents being killed in front of their eyes. Some of them were traumatized and were in a lot of stress. And these children, I lived with them and wanted to share with them this nonviolent communication way, so that if the children learn and understand, maybe the future generation would be different. So now you cannot teach children. The best way to teach children is to model the process. So I had to live this process that I learned from Marshall, and so that the children could see and learn from my way of living, sharing with them. And from me they learned, but they saw how I behaved, and they learned from me this process. And at the same time I learned from the children, because children have a way of really living, naturally living this way of peaceful living. They do not hold on to their anger. They forget their anger easily, and they have a beautiful way of flowing with life.
Ma z nimi ojciec kontakt?
I'm still in contact with them. Now they have all grown up, and they have their own families and children, and some have gone out of the country in different places.
Zastanawiam się, jak to jest być jezuitą, bo nie wiem, czy to jest tak, że tam, gdzie ojciec mieszka, to jest jakiś taki budynek, gdzie jest więcej księży. Pytam o taką prywatność poza podróżami. Czy jest jej dużo i jak ona wygląda?
I have a question about you being a Jesuit. How is it to be a Jesuit in Sri Lanka? And there's this curiosity about your privacy. Do you live with other Jesuits? How is your normal life when you do not travel?
I live in a community of Jesuits. I have 5 Jesuits I'm living with. It's a community. One is a lawyer, and the other one is a teacher, and the other one is a parish priest in a church. So they are doing different works, but we all live together. And they also learned a little bit of this process through these children and this project of running this place for the children.
Ile czasu jest ojciec w podróży, a ile jest czasu właśnie na to, żeby być w Sri Lance?
I'm wondering, how much time are you traveling and how much time do you spend in Sri Lanka?
Once a year I travel for about 2-3 months. It all depends on people inviting me to different places. If there are invitations, then I go and speak to them and share what I had. Because it is through this project of these children that I live with, I really integrated the process, what I learned from Marshall, into my life.
A jak ojciec odpoczywa? Co najbardziej ojca cieszy w życiu?
And how do you take care of yourself? How do you rest? What brings joy to your life?
Life takes care of me. It's not I take care of life. As soon as I stop resisting life, then life does take care of me abundantly.
To tak wygląda, że ojciec wstaje rano i mówi, poczekam, co się wydarzy.
What does it look like? Do you just wake up and you say, okay, let's wait what happens?
You wake up and do what you need to do, what is in front of you. And as you do what you need to do, and life guides you through everything that you do.
Płyń na fali, zaufaj życiu, to są takie rady, które słyszę często, natomiast one są dla mnie bardzo trudne w realizacji, bo jednocześnie jest też stawianie granic, więc czy ojciec tak zgadza się na wszystko, czy czasem zdarza się powiedzieć nie?
When you talk about catching the wave and being one with the wave, agreeing with life, not resisting life, this sounds like a very good advice, but actually it's harder to make it happen because sometimes I feel that my boundaries are overcrossed, and I wonder, do you, Father, ever say no?
I do. When you need to say no, you say no. When you have to say yes, you say yes. Meeting Marshall was not planned by me. It just came to me. It happened that I was introduced to Marshall. And calling these children and to live with is also an idea that came, that I just followed. That was the ideas that were presented to me. Actually, it is life actually giving all these ideas, and you follow it. And as you follow also, you follow the guidance of life, because as you live, you realize what is helpful and what is not helpful.
Jak tego słucham, to sobie myślę o tym, że jest gdzieś to przekonanie, że coś ma sens, a coś nie ma sensu. Ale też często mam takie poczucie, jakby były we mnie dwie osoby. Jedna ciągnie w jedną stronę, a druga w drugą. I co wtedy?
So when I listen to you, I think of the feeling which very often I have. Like sometimes I have a feeling, okay, this makes sense and this doesn't. And at the same time, I feel that inside of me, they are at least two different parts. One says, yes, I want to do it, and the other one says, no way that I will ever do it. And how do you deal with this?
Now, one thing is knowledge that comes to you in your head, and then there is something else that really penetrates your heart. So I learned the teaching from Marshall, but NVC in your head doesn't help you. It is through living this process with the children, I learned how to integrate it and to penetrate these things into my life.
Czy możemy powiedzieć, że jest taka szansa na to, że po prostu nadejdzie taki moment, że coś się wie naprawdę i to jest właśnie to?
Do you think there is a chance that there will come a moment of our life when we get it, when we come to this place of knowing, the moment when we will discover, yes, I know what's important to me.
So what we receive in our heads, what we call knowledge, when that knowledge becomes integrated through our living it, then we know what we have learned. And then that it stays with this, and it begins to help us and help the people that we meet.
Wróćmy do współczesnych czasów i do zmiany. Czy ojciec uważa, że my powinniśmy się jakoś szczególnie zmieniać? Bo tak jak patrzę na to, co się dzieje, to mało kto jest zadowolony z tego, co ma. Czyli to jest o takim wielkim pragnieniu zmiany, a z drugiej strony to pragnienie jest już czasem wręcz chorobliwe.
Let's go back to present times, to our life. And let's talk about change. We live in the times when we are mostly not happy about what is around us, what we are, what we do, how we live our life. And how do you look at change? Should we change?
Yes. Change is the only thing that is always there, present in our lives. And it's unavoidable. As the Greek philosopher says, that you cannot step into the river twice. Our lives keeps changing. So change is a constant in our lives.
A jakbym zapytała ojca o to, czy ojciec podejmował w swoim życiu jakieś decyzje o zmianie? Bo z tego, co słyszę, to ojciec poddaje się biegowi życia. Natomiast myślę, że czasem człowiek też sobie coś postanawia.
So when you talk about change, I am wondering, did you ever made conscious decision about changing something in your life. From what you say, it seems like you just surrender to life and that you agree with what comes to you. So, have you ever changed consciously?
Yes, I have tried to change, and I have changed many things, but then later on I began to realize the change that I make brings me more suffering. And you are able to change only when you fully realize that there is nothing to change.
A czy mogłabym po prostu poprosić o jakiś przykład życiowej decyzji, która została zrobiona i ona była przeciwko temu nurtowi życia i nie wyszła, a coś innego okazało się, że działa?
Can you give me an example, a concrete, precise example of a situation where you consciously decided to change something about some aspects of your life and then you realized that it didn't work?
Actually, I tried to change people and myself through projects like many projects that I take upon. Then they realize with those changes come also lots of pain and suffering that comes with it. So, as an example, this is my experience. I mean, many things that I tried to do for myself, trying to change the other person, brings more conflicts, more trouble, more pain for me and for the other. And this has been my experience throughout.
Ale też Marshall mówił, że my tak naprawdę w danym momencie, ja to tak rozumiem, że kiedy coś robimy, to my nie wiemy, że to przyniesie taki efekt. I też jest taka wielka łaskawość dla samego siebie, patrząc na to, co się działo w przeszłości, żeby sobie uznać, tak, to, że się działało najlepiej, jak się potrafiło.
From what I learned from Marshall, I have this understanding that at the moment when I make decision, this is the best decision I can make. At this present moment, with what I know, who I am, the point of life I am, this is the best decision I am making. So I took this as a learning, not to punish myself for the mistakes which I make in life.
That's correct. I mean, to be able to stay with life. Life is, of course, full of changes. But not to call them mistakes, but to stay with them and to realize there is nothing broken. Once you realize that really the change, we want to change because you think there is something broken, something better. But it's a question of being able to be here and now and to be present to life and to know that there is nothing broken that you need to change. So the more you can stay with that, then of course change, everything that you do as change becomes useful.
Zmienię teraz temat, bo chciałabym porozmawiać o tej rozmaitości spotkań z ludźmi, bo niewątpliwie duchowość w NVC to jest taki temat, który, tak jak mówię, nie pojawia się na początku i on w jakiś sposób też koresponduje z tym, że ludzie należą do różnych religii. Jak sobie ojciec z tym radzi, z wychodzeniem do ludzi o różnych tak naprawdę światopoglądach?
Now I would like to change the topic. Let's talk about the spirituality of NVC. When we think about spirituality, we think about religion. And you meet people from different backgrounds, different cultures. How do you deal with that abundance of their experiences, that they come from different worlds, how do you approach them, and how do you understand spirituality in nonviolent communication?
Spirituality belongs to everyone. Everyone has a life, and with life also comes spirituality. When you're talking about spirituality, to approach the other person, respecting their spirituality, respecting where they are at, is what is important. Then to be able to understand where they are and what is their spirituality, how they understand life, and to be able to help them. That is what, for me, is spirituality.
A czy to, że ojciec jest jezuitą, a wywodzi się ze Sri Lanki i tam jest dużo różnych wyznań, to jest kwestia wychowania w konkretnej rodzinie i tradycji, czy to jest kwestia wyboru?
You became Jesuit, coming from Sri Lanka, where there is a lot of religions, a lot of different cultures. How did you end up being a Jesuit? Was it a matter of choice, or was it a result of being born into a family of certain tradition?
So it is all of it. First of all, my father was a Hindu, and all his family is Hindu. While my mother was a Catholic for a long, from generations. And when they married, my father became a Catholic. And my eldest brother, we were studying in a school run by the Jesuits, and he was attracted and he became a priest. And I am the fourth in the family, and I also chose this path because I thought, looking at my brother, looking at all the people that I encountered in the schools, these missionaries coming from far away, and how they dedicated their lives, that also attracted me, and I joined the Jesuits.
Kiedy ojciec podjął tę decyzję? To był jakiś moment spotkania, nie wiem, z Bogiem, czy samego z sobą? Czy to znowu ta życiowa fala tak niosła?
So how did it happen exactly? Was it a specific moment, like enlightening, like contact with God, and you just knew? Or was it a wave which just carried you?
So this is actually what desire that comes from your heart. And you stay with the desire, and then a path opens for you and you walk on it.
A przed poznaniem Marshalla Rosenberga, co było dla ojca ważne? Bo słyszałam o tych filmach, o jakichś takich właśnie medialnych przekazach dotyczących Biblii. Co wtedy ojciec znajdował dla siebie właśnie w Biblii? I jak to się potem zmieniło, kiedy poznał ojciec Marshalla?
What was important to you before you met Marshall? You mentioned earlier about making movies and using media in order to share gospel. So I was wondering, what was guiding you? What was important to you before you met Marshall? And how meeting Marshall changed your outlook on life?
Before Marshall, what was important for me was, what was precious for me is the gospel. And that is why I learned media to be able to share it with other people. But after meeting Marshall, I realized besides the gospel and also in the gospels to discover this process that Marshall is talking about. And I continue to share that with all the people.
Ja chyba wchodzę na trudny grunt. Chciałam spytać, czy Marshall Rosenberg też postrzegał NVC przez pryzmat duchowości?
I am aware that I am touching a very risky topic. I'm stepping on the not very stable ground, but I want to ask, like, how Marshall looked at the spiritual aspect of NVC.
Marshall was in denial of the spirituality of NVC for some time. But then he began to see and that it is there. And then he started sharing about and writing about the spirituality of NVC. He was afraid in the beginning because he saw there was so much of division, so much of strife and struggle and conflict among religions, and he wanted to keep away from religion. But actually, all religions carry a deep spirituality that is common to all of them. And it is holding on to our religion and saying it is only our religion is correct, and trying to grab other people into our religion, trying to proselytize. These are the problems of the religions. But spirituality is same. And once you enter in any religion deeply enough, you begin to see that we are all connected. We are all have one spirituality.
A czy NVC też jest dla ateistów? Czy to może być tak, bo tak sobie wyobrażam, że jak już ojciec przyjeżdża, to od razu to NVC jest łączone z duchowością. Ale mam takie poczucie, że w zachodnim świecie, a może nie tylko w zachodnim, to wręcz może jakoś odstręczać, tak? Osoby, które nie mają ochoty na przykład na żadną religię.
Do you think that nonviolent communication is also for atheists? Because I am under impression that this spiritual aspect of NVC can be something which stops people who are non-believers from approaching this method. What is your experience? Especially I'm thinking about the Western world, the Europe.
Spirituality, when we speak of spirituality is common to all human lives. And every religion has specific aspects of spirituality, specific way of approaching spirituality. But it is not, so the NVC does not block anyone approaching any religious spirituality. Neither does any religion blocks us approaching the spirituality of NVC. For example, in Christianity, we are taught that we need to love one another and ourselves. And NVC gives us a way to do that in concrete steps. And so it helps us to deepen our own way of spirituality. That way NVC helps not only Christianity, all spirituality, because in every spirituality the commitment is always love and connection.
Kończąc początkiem, to w takim razie jestem osobą, która wysłuchała tej rozmowy i co mam robić?
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Let's end with the beginning in mind. As a beginner on this path, what am I to do?
So this process of nonviolent communication, I found it helpful in my life, and that is the reason that I share it with others. But the knowledge has to become wisdom through our living it. So you can learn NVC in so many ways from so many people. And once you have that knowledge, then you need to live it. And this knowledge becomes wisdom that could be a guide to our lives. And for those who want to know more about NVC, you can approach CNVC, Center for Nonviolent Communication. That is cnvc.org, and contact them and you could find more about NVC.
Dodajmy też, że mamy trochę polskich już trenerów i w Polsce też książki Marshalla Rosenberga były przetłumaczone i są liczne kursy, spotkania. W każdym razie na NVC można trafić.
Let's mention that we have a lot of Polish trainers who are certified by CNVC, and there is like the books by Marshall were translated into Polish. There is a lot of literature in Polish on NVC. So there is many ways to learn it. I want to add one more thing. Chris is assessor of CNVC, so he is the core of that organization.
Ojciec Chris jest asesorem w CNVC, czyli można powiedzieć, że miałyśmy tutaj przyjemność goszczenia osoby, która jest w tym momencie, jest esencją NVC.